Welcome to Average Joe's. Chances are you're watching this video because you are considering buying a new set of pool balls. Well, Aramith is pretty much the world's leading manufacturer of pool balls, but there's a couple of little secrets that they don't want you to find out about, and this set of balls is one of them.
You'll have to torture me, I'll never tell you.
Some Aramith don't want to make a big song and dance about the fact that they do produce pool balls for the lower end of the market. So much so, in fact, that they don't promote two of their cheapest set of balls at all on their website. So because these are not promoted by Aramith, they can be a little bit difficult to track down, kind of like a bad smell, maybe even a stale fart in a Volvo, but no, you can't blame it on the dog.
Woo! You guys meet? Greg, Janice?
We sure did!
But it doesn't matter, because at Amazon, which is full of bad smells, you can get these pretty easily. But in all seriousness, we did wonder why these aren't available on the Aramith website, so we contacted them direct and asked the question.
You can't handle the truth!
And they explained that there is indeed a very specific reason that they don't feature these on their website, and that's because these are not available worldwide. The Aramith crown balls have been developed specifically for the North American, i.e. USA and Canadian markets. And so because these balls aren't available worldwide, they don't feature them on their website.
This is actually very serious!
So a set of the Aramith Crown, also known as the Aramith Standard balls, will currently set you back $100 on Amazon, making them the second cheapest set of balls that Aramith produce. We've also done a review on the very cheapest ones that they do, the Continental, so I have a link for you in the video description below. So if your budget's really tight, you might want to check those out as well. But the ones that we're focusing on today are the Crowns or the Standards. So these balls are definitely aimed towards the lower end of the market. We can take a quick look and see what our first impressions are. The most important thing to point out is when it comes to Aramith balls, they are made of phenolic resin, which is a word that you might have heard bounced around quite a number of times when you've been searching and researching which pool balls to buy. So what is phenolic resin? Phenolic resin is essentially a specific type of resin. All pool balls are made from resins or polymers. But Aramiths are made from this specific phenolic resin. And phenolic resin is a particularly hard type of resin and is particularly hard wearing, which makes it ideal for use in upper end pool balls. And Aramith claim that phenolic balls will last up to 5 times longer than balls made from other resins, which when you look at it long term, although you're paying a little bit more up front, these balls should last for many years.
Old balls? Gross.
In fact, in Aramith's own research, they claim that their balls are good for a minimum of 400,000 hits, by which time balls made from other resins were deemed unusable.
Is that the guy with the old balls?
Yeah, I think it is.
So the long and the short of it is, if you're investing into a set of phenolic resin balls, they should last you a lot longer than cheaper balls made from other resins. Now, Aramith balls usually are a lot more expensive. You can pay up to around $400 for some of the upper tier sets from Aramith. So at just $100, these are exceptional value for money for phenolic resin balls. So let's take a look. So first impressions, let's take a look at these. You get the usual Aramith little pamphlet. Okay, so yeah, we've got the nice traditional colours. The colours are nice and vibrant, none of them look dull. They're not quite as glossy in appearance as some of the upper end sets. I like the colours. Obviously it's a very traditional design on the solids. You have the solid ball with a white spot with a black number in the centre. Nice clear font that's been used. Let's have a look. Now what's slightly unusual on the design is the striped balls. And what you'd expect to see traditionally on the striped ball is you'd expect to see essentially this round circle with the number on it in the middle of the stripe. So essentially a striped ball is the same as this, but this would have a white pole on either end and the number kind of in the middle, if that makes any sense. Whereas here, what they've done is we actually have a solid stripe running all the way around, but instead of the number being within the stripe, it's actually printed bang in the centre of the pole. Now, it's not printed. We looked at the Continental set, and on the Continentals, the stripes and the numbers are actually printed onto those balls. These are most definitely aren't. I can't feel anything that's raised, so that's more the kind of Aramith quality that you would expect comparing these to the Continentals. Actually, very, very nice. They've got a nice feel to them. They're nice and smooth, consistent. The shine's not bad. Like I said, they're not quite as high gloss as some of the upper end ones, but they're certainly not dull. They've got a decent shine to them. Nice colours. They're nice, clear, crisp. The numbers are particularly crisp, actually. They almost look like that they should be printed on, but I don't think that they are. Certainly can't feel them. But they're so crisp, they look like that they're printed on, if that makes any sense. Usually when they're formed as part of the resin, you get kind of a slight blur, but these are really nice and crisp. Tiniest blur on the 8 there. But yeah, overall, looks wise, as long as you can put up with this slightly unusual design of having your striped numbers printed on the poles of the ball rather than on the stripe, as long as you don't mind that, they look really nice. I really like the font. It's very, very clear, decent shine, not overly glossy, really nice colours. So visually, first impressions, it looks like an excellent set. So if you've watched any of our videos here before at Average Joe's, first of all, thank you very much.
I love you, man.
And secondly, you'll know that we put all of our equipment through a stringent set of testing procedures. And that will include, on these balls, checking the size and the weight, comparing them to the WPA regulations, and also every product that we review here, we ensure gets a minimum of 5 hours of use. That's to ensure that we can bring you a proper and fair review. So we're going to start by checking the size and the weights. So let's get into the technical stuff. So our first test will be to weigh the balls using a calibrated scale, and we're going to be checking how uniform the balls are across the entire set, and also to ensure that they meet the WPA regulations. And the WPA regulations state that pool balls should weigh between 5.5 and 6 ounces. And after weighing the set, we found that every single ball easily met the WPA regulations. All of the balls were towards the upper end of the allowed weight, and we had an average ball weight of 5.86 ounces. Our lightest ball was the 9 ball, which weighed in at 5.814 ounces. And our heaviest ball was the cue ball, and that weighed in at 5.929 ounces. So, to summarise, all of the balls in this set easily met the WPA requirements. And this set had a variance between the lightest and heaviest balls of just 1.98%. Now, being fussy, the variance could be better. To give you a comparison, Aramith's top of the range tournament black set, which we reviewed recently, had a variance of just 0.65%.
That's nitpicking, isn't it?
But those balls are $400 a set, whereas these balls we're reviewing today are just $100 a set. So with that in mind, it's still a decent result for variance. So overall, this is a well-matched set that easily met the WPA regulations. So in theory, this set is suitable for tournament use. It's pretty good for $100.
I'd buy that for $1.
So taking all of these factors into consideration, we will award the Aramith crowns with a 14 out of 20 for weight. So moving on to our second test, we will now measure the balls using a calibrated micrometer. The WPA regulations require pool balls to be 2 1/4 inches, which is 57.15 millimeters, with a permitted tolerance as shown here on screen. And again, just like our weight test, we found that these balls surpassed the WPA requirements for size. Our smallest ball was the number 14 at 57.08 millimeters. And our largest balls were the number 5, 11 and the cue ball, that all measured in identically at 57.16 millimeters. So to summarise for size, all of the balls in our set easily hit the WPA requirements. And there was just 0.08 millimeters difference between the smallest and largest balls in our set, which gives us a size variance of just 0.15% between our largest and smallest balls. And this makes for a really well matched set. And remembering this set comes in at just $100, that's a fantastic result for size. So next we need to give a score for the Aramith crowns, and with this excellent result on size we're going to go 17 out of 20. So we've now had these balls on the table for a solid week, so these have definitely had more than the minimum requirement of 5 hours before we make any assessment. So the Aramith Crown Pool Balls, what do we think? So most importantly, how did these balls play?
You play with your balls a lot.
Well, I must say I was really impressed. They play beautifully. They feel very solid. Obviously this is a phenolic resin set. It's got a very solid feel. The balls roll really well. As you'll see from the size and the weight tests that we did, they smashed the WPA requirements for those as well. And remembering that these come in at just around $100 a set, this is the second cheapest set of phenolic resin balls, the other cheapest being the Continentals by Aramith, and we will be doing a separate review, and if you want to see how those stack up compared to these, because they're about $55 compared to $100, we'll have a link for you in the product description below. But these crowns, overall, we were absolutely really impressed.
I gotta say I'm impressed.
So what did I actually like about these balls? Well, like I said, the main thing is how solid they feel. You know, if you get a cheap set of balls, often they feel a little bit lightweight, the sound's a little bit tinny when they're smashing together. If you compare the sound of these knocking together compared to the tournaments, you can almost hear no difference at all. They're a really solid and nice feel to them. And when you compare these to like a tournament set, which are kind of in the $350 to $400 mark, as far as playing goes, these balls actually hold up really well. You know, these are around $100 a set. Tournaments are about $350 to $400. Is a tournament set worth 4 times the price of these? Do they play 4 times better? No, they probably don't. These are probably not that far away from the playability on a top-end set. These really have impressed us. So when you get used to playing with the more upper-end ball sets, things like the Aramith tournament sets,
do not play with my balls.
You absolutely get kind of tuned in to the way that these balls behave. And so when you're used to a set like that, you have kind of expectations of exactly what should happen when you're hitting balls at different angles. And when you come to cheaper ball sets, depending on what materials they're made of and kind of how the weights and sizes compare and things of that nature, they can play differently, and so you almost have to kind of alter your game if you're used to playing on higher end ball sets. But that definitely is not the case with the crowns. These play, like I said, almost as well as some of the top end sets, but of course with a much lower price tag.
Shop smart. Shop S-smart. You got that?
So they play really well, but what about cosmetics? So the design of these is a little bit different. You've got these stripe balls that don't have the number around the band. Usually you have a white circle in the middle of the band and the number is bang in the center there. Of course they have this design where it's in the middle of the white pole. That makes it very distinctive. Obviously, if you ever see anyone watching YouTube or whatever, you ever see a set of balls that looks like this, you know exactly what they are straight away. So they are quite distinctive. From a design perspective, you could argue that maybe they are a little bit plain. They're in the very traditional colours, which is fine for a non-tournament or a non-TV set. The The font that they use, it's nice and clear, but again, it's nothing special. There's no kind of flourishes. As far as a design goes, it's a fairly ordinary looking set, apart from the, like I said, the designs on the stripe balls, which some people will love, some people will hate. Personally, I think it's quite smart. It's a little bit different. So from that respect, from a cosmetic standpoint, yes, there's nothing special here. They do look fairly standard, but you've got to remember again that these are only a fraction of the price of the upper end balls, which can be $300 to $400.
Show me the money.
So are you just paying for cosmetics? Are you going to get a big difference? You're probably going to get a bigger difference cosmetically than you will in the way that the balls play, and these play extremely well. And of course, that's probably for most people the most important factor. Now there's another factor that we haven't yet addressed when it comes to the Aramith crowns, and that these balls are in fact in all but appearance identical to the Aramith Premiers. And the Aramith Premier set retails at around $150 compared to $100 for the crowns. And both sets of these balls are manufactured to exactly the same standard and using exactly the same resin, which is the Aramith Premier resin. And both of those sets feature engraved numbers and don't have the vitrification layer, and so the numbers on both of those sets are crystal clear. So by buying the crowns, you're effectively getting a $150 set for $100. But there is a trade-off.
There it is. I knew this was too good to be true.
To help keep the retail price low on the crowns, Aramith will allow minor cosmetic defects to pass through quality control, provided that those faults are purely cosmetic and in no way would affect the playability or performance of the balls. And so to give you an example, on our number 10 ball here, we spotted that it has a very, very minor cosmetic defect just on the edge of the 0 just there, and that's the kind of minor cosmetic defect that you're likely to find on a set of the crowns. But that doesn't mean that all the balls in your set will have cosmetic defects, far from it. This is the only one that we found in this set. And generally these types of cosmetic defects are so small you probably wouldn't even notice them, and you certainly wouldn't notice them day to day when you're just playing with them. So provided you're happy to accept that the occasional ball may have a very, very small cosmetic defect, you can essentially get a set of Premiers for $100 instead of $150.
Wow, that sounds like a really good deal.
So as far as condition goes, after a week, obviously these are absolutely fine. A set of these crowns, I would expect these to last you at least 10 years. So when you're looking at $100, it's actually quite a safe investment. $10 a year, not really that much.
Well, hell, since you mentioned it, let me have $10. I'll be damned.
These are really, really good quality balls, definitely. And what I would say on the cue ball, I actually really like this cue ball. Behaves very, very nicely. It's quite easy to control. Easy to apply spin and draw and things of that nature. It's actually got a really, really good feel to it. One thing I would say with this cue ball, however, it does probably retain chalk a little bit more than the cue balls in the higher end sets. So from that perspective it plays well, but it's probably not the greatest cue ball in the world. But if you wanted to kind of upgrade this set, what you could do is buy yourself a spotted Pro Cup cue ball. They're about $35 to $40. And so, $135, $140 all in, you'd have quite a smart looking set. And of course, you'd have a spotted cue ball, which makes it kind of easier to track your performance when you're doing things like a spin. You can kind of see what the behavior of that ball is. But as far as a fairly standard cue ball goes, like I say, it plays really well, but the chalk retention is a little bit more than I would like. Also, these pool balls have a really kind of nice gloss to them. They have a nice kind of look, a nice sheen. And what happens with cheaper ball balls, often over time, that tends to wear off. But again, being Aramith, we would expect that to last, so you're probably quite safe in that regard. And remember, these are phenolic resin, so they're going to be nice and hard wearing too. Now, one of the factors that we really liked with the crown balls is how crisp and sharp the numbers are. And there is a technical reason for this. These numbers actually aren't printed on. These numbers are engraved exactly the same as they would be on any other Aramith ball. But the big difference being that these are made from the Aramith Premier resin, and these balls don't have the vitrification layer. So what does the vitrification layer actually do in regard to pool balls? Well, it's a translucent layer that's added on towards the end of the manufacturing process. And that layer is designed to be more dense and more resistant to wear, which is why some of the higher end Aramith Aramith ball sets that do have that layer probably would last longer than these, but that said, these will still last a very long time. And when you look at the upper end sets, so things like the tournaments that do have that extra layer, you'll notice when you look at the numbers that they have a very kind of slight blur to them, and that is all down to that extra layer that's added during the manufacturing process. But here on the Aramith Crowns and also the Aramith Premiers, they do not have that extra layer, and so that's the technical reason why these numbers are pin sharp.
I look good. I mean really good.
So should you be looking at buying a set of these? Absolutely, they are a fantastic set. Now if you're starting off in pool, you're probably looking on Amazon or similar websites, and you're looking for a cheap set of balls. And pool balls start around the kind of $30 mark. That will be the cheapest set, but that won't be a phenolic resin set. That will be some kind of a polymer, and they behave very, very differently indeed. Yes, they are cheap, but they don't play the same as a phenolic resin set. But can you warrant, if you're after a cheap set, spending $100 over $30 is over 3 times the price? Well, to be honest, these are worth every penny over the cheapest sets of balls that you will find. These are 3 times better. They will play better and they will certainly last longer. So yes, you know, $100, it's a little bit more than you might have initially wanted to spend on a set of balls if you're looking just to get a cheap set. But that said, these are an investment. You know, a cheap set of pool balls is probably not going to look very good after 10 years. These will still be going strong.
You look awful.
Thank you.
And one of the key advantages of this set over the cheapest sets that you can buy is these are phenolic resins. And phenolic resin balls, as I mentioned before, play a lot differently to those cheap polymer resin balls. And also in professional tournaments, when you play under the WPA regulations, they insist that any ball used in a professional tournament must be made from phenolic resin. So phenolic resin are what all of the professionals use. And there's another factor that's worth mentioning when you're considering the value for money that these balls offer, especially comparing them to cheaper poly resin balls. And that is the cloth wear on your table. Now all pool balls have a wearing effect on the cloth that's on your pool table. However, on poly resin balls, especially as they get a little bit older and that initial kind of a gloss, that sheen, that polish that they put on the balls has worn off, which it does tend to do a lot faster on poly resin balls than it does on these phenolic resin balls, then the ongoing wear to your pool table cloth will certainly become considerably higher. So it is generally accepted in the pool industry that phenolic resin balls will be less hard wearing on your pool tablecloth than poly resin balls. So it's worth bearing that in mind as well, because using cheap poly resin balls, as I said, especially as they get older, will likely mean that you'll have to change your pool tablecloth a little bit sooner than you did if you were using phenolic resin balls. So you need to factor that into your overall calculation. So for that extra investment, you're getting a much higher end product. So only you can make the decision of whether you're prepared to kind of up that from $30 to $100, whether you can justify it.
Live a little.
But from a quality perspective, definitely these are worth 3 times the price than the cheapest balls that you can buy. So what's our overall long-lasting impression of the Aramith Crowns? So it's now time to award the Aramith Crown Pool Balls their final Average Joe's rating. And as we saw earlier in the video, these balls scored a 17 out of 20 on size and a 14 out of 20 for weight. So next up, let's look at quality. So overall, these are an excellent set. Yes, they are a little bit plain cosmetically, but it's nice to have the little design flourish of having the numbers printed onto the white poles of the balls. They have a nice finish complete with a high gloss and easy to read numbers. And at $100, we're not expecting these to win any design awards, but these are perfectly practical and do exactly what they're intended to do. Therefore, we'll award a 15 out of 20 for quality. So next, let's move on to performance. Again, the performance on these balls is excellent. They have a really solid feel to them during play and they roll really well. And they certainly play a lot better than their low price tag would suggest. The cue ball has nice control, but we did find that it tends to retain chalk a little bit more than we'd like. But really, that's just nitpicking on a set that otherwise plays excellently. So we're happy to award a 17 out of 20 for performance. And on to our final category, value for money. At just $100 a set, these phenolic resin balls by Aramith offer superb value for money. The positives by far outweigh the minor niggles. And when you consider that these will play a pretty close game to the Aramith tournaments, which will set you back $350 to $400 a set, these really do stand out as somewhat of a bargain buy. So we'll award an 18 out of 20 for value for money. So adding up all of these scores, we get an official Average Joe's rating of 81 out of a possible 100, making these a highly recommended purchase for people on the lookout for a cheap set of balls that won't break the bank. So overall, these are an excellent set of balls, especially at $100. At that kind of price for what you get, they are an absolute bargain.
It's a deal. It's a steal.
I would happily own these. I would happily play with these and have these on my table as my daily use balls. They really are great. The only thing that I might do, as I mentioned before, I might swap out the cue ball for Aramith's spotted. This is the Pro Cup spotted cue ball. And I think if you have that as your set, yeah, that would last you for many years, and you're going to have a lot of fun out of these balls. So yeah, they absolutely come with my highest recommendation. So if you're interested in buying a set of the Aramith crown balls, we will add a link for you into the video description below for the cheapest available price for these balls on Amazon. So if you do end up buying a set of these balls, please help support us in return and be sure to use the link in the video description below. So thank you for joining us here at Average Joe's. If you found this video helpful or useful in any way at all, can we ask you a quick favour? Please take 1 second out of your busy day just to hit that like button for us. And also please consider subscribing to our channel. We've got loads more great pool related content just waiting for you to check out, and it really helps us out. We appreciate it. We'll see you again.
No one can survive these deadly rays.